Right. My dad was Gerry Anderson, and he half wrote these books, which didn't actually have a full title at the time, but we decided we would make the most of them and try and get them completed. So we found MG Harris to complete them. And so I'll just pass over to MG.
So I'm MG Harris. MG stands for Maria Guadalupe. It's not just a sort of made-up J.K. Rowling type name. It really is my name, although nobody really calls me MG. They call me Peter, which is short for Guadalupe. See, it's complicated, so we'll just stick to MG. I'm a children's author, actually. I write for 10 to 14-year-olds, generally, and the thing I've had majorly published was the Joshua Files, which is a series of action-adventure novels for kids. So I'm normally, when I go and do this kind of event, it's for a bunch of 11 and 12-year-olds, okay? So I'm not really used to talking to adults. I try and talk to the 11 and 12-year-olds as though they're university students, because before that I used to work in university, so I give a seminar. Seminar is my style of delivery, so we will be stopping for questions with just looking at how I came to this whole thing, because actually a couple of other writers had been brought in to work with Gerry to bring these books that he was working on that didn't have a title at the time to the market, if you like. And it hadn't sort of worked a couple of times because Gerry hadn't really got on. Would that be fair to say? Gerry hadn't got on with the writer, so he'd met with the writer, talked about his plans and what they wanted to do, and then the writer had written some sample chapters and Gerry had gone, no, that's rubbish. That's not what I said at all. Is that right? Is that fair?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So I was like, I don't know, the third writer to be brought in, and I was going to meet Gerry, but by then Gerry was already quite ill, and my agent had warned me. He said, because I was like, am I going to meet Gerry Anderson? Am I going to meet Gerry Anderson? He said, yes, but he's really quite poorly now, and you probably won't be able to talk much about the plot because he's not able to have a conversation that doesn't kind of circulate back on itself. So I was still really excited. And then, like everybody else, I was devastated, really, obviously relatively, a couple of weeks later, to hear that Gerry had passed away. And so I was never going to get my chance to meet him and work with him. But then, not long later, Jamie contacted me and said, we still want you to do this if you're willing. Now that you'd have to do more of it on your own because Gerry's not around anymore. But we've still got his ideas, we've got the chapters, the sample chapters that he was working on, we've got some kind of idea of where the story might go. And I said, yeah, I would be really interested because, as I'm about to show you, I had a big think about, I just thought, how much influence has Gerry Anderson work really had on me? Because, of course, I watched it a lot as a child. I watched Thunderbirds and I watched Stingray principally, and then I watched Terrorhawk. So those are the three shows that I mainly watched. But when I started thinking about the Joshua Files, and I just thought, wow, actually, a lot had gone in and a lot had sort of been regurgitated that was very Andersonian. And I'll show you the little video that we put together to look at this.
What have I got in common with the directors of epic movie series like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings and Batman? Well, it's Gerry Anderson. Peter Jackson, George Lucas, Christopher Nolan, and scores of other writers for screen and page watched shows like Supercar, Space 1999, Captain Scarlet and Thunderbirds. Gerry's imagination inspired so many of us. For example, looking back, I'm amazed at how much genetic material is shared by my Joshua File series and Gerry's work. Secret society hidden underground in an exotic location? Check. Massive disaster threatening the whole Earth and only one secret organisation with the technology and training to save it? Check. A swimming pool and resort location to hide the high-tech underground base? Check. Dashing young pilots flying cool high-tech suborbital aircraft? Check. An advanced society with super advanced tech hiding beneath a mysterious ancient pyramid? You need to be a real Thunderbirds expert to get this one, but it's all there in an episode called The Uninvited. Check. Evil guys bent on world domination using mind control? Check. When Gerry Anderson's son, Jamie, asked me if I'd like to get involved with bringing Gerry's final project to the page, well, I was thrilled. I couldn't think of a better tribute to one of the greatest creators of television that ever lived. Just like the Joshua Files, Gemini Force 1 is going to be full of the action, adventure, thrills, character drama, high-tech and nail-biting rescues that you've come to love from Gerry Anderson. Let's get behind this one, Kickstarter. Let's realise Gerry Anderson's final creation.
I love the flamey bit at the end. Thank you for that. Okay, so the story goes that we went to see some publishers. Well, actually, I didn't at this point go anywhere near publishers because I got my agent to do it. But my agent came back and said, oh, they're very interested, very interested. But they don't know who it's for. I said, is it for adults? Is it for children? And we said, well, it's for adults and children. It's for the young and the young at heart. That's what Anderson Entertainment's about. But the thing is, the publishing industry's got very sort of stratified. And I knew this, obviously, as a children's author. I did sort of think, I wonder what's going to happen. Because even if you write for children, as I do, there's a big difference in whether you write for middle grade, which is kind of like 9 till 12, and whether you write young adult, which is, well, or teen, which is 12 plus, or young adult, which is technically sort of 14 plus. And every kind of little area is very specialised, and publishers know exactly what they're looking for in each area. So if you go to a children's publisher, you know, and say this is a book, they're like, what age is it for? And because we couldn't really satisfy them with the answer, I think that's fair to say, because we'd say there are adult characters in it, but you know, they're not the main characters, and they were like, yes, but could there be more children? Could the children be more important? Could all of the pilots be children? And we said, no, because that, you know, we just couldn't see Gerry having done anything like that, really. So we just said, no, okay, it's not going to happen with publishers. So we decided that we would do it with Kickstarter. And this was James' idea, really, and he kind of talked to my agent, and they both went, yeah, we should do this. So we put together a campaign. It happened over a month, really. We really just, Jamie mostly worked incredibly hard putting videos together and, you know, getting artwork commissioned, and people really helped us a lot. I mean, straight away we got help from Anderson fans. And we started this campaign, and when we announced it, there was like amazing news coverage, wasn't it? We couldn't believe the news coverage we got, so we thought, okay, maybe we're onto something. Anyway, the campaign started on September 5th, wasn't it? Yes, it started on September 5th, and within, I can't remember what day we hit this, but this was our target, 24,350, which we'd arrived at by spreadsheets of, you know, how much it would cost us to produce the books and send the books and post the books and all the other rewards that we were going to give to the Kickstarter backers. So we reached that with 5 days to go. We were, you know, we were over the moon, really. And we were just like, how big could this go? Because we had a whole bunch of stretch targets of things that we would do if we made more money than we needed just to put the book together. And in fact, the final tally was 33,463, which would pay for us to do, you know, a few more things, and most notably an audiobook. We were really keen to do. Okay. Now, something happened at this point. Remember those publishers who weren't interested because they didn't know who to sell it to and everything? They started calling us and saying, yes, this project that you're working on, it's really good, we'd really like to publish it. And we were like, yeah, we did send you a proposal. And they were like, really? Because we haven't seen it, never saw this proposal at all, I don't know what you're talking about. And they'd blame somebody else in the company saying, oh, someone else said no, not me, I didn't even see it. So suddenly, you know, our agent was quite busy and was brought on board by Anderson Entertainment to sell this to publishers. So then we, you know, now I kind of felt I was on familiar ground. I was back into talking to publishers, and this time it really had to be a children's project because the publisher that really, really wanted it most and could show the most commitment to it was Orion Children's Books. So we had a meeting that wasn't completely unlike a sort of meeting that we'd imagined. We sort of dramatised on a video that I'm not going to show today. You can hunt it down. No, actually we have hidden it, haven't we? Yeah, because it's a bit too close to what did happen, and we did find ourselves saying things like, "Well, they couldn't all be children, no." And we actually had a meeting where we had to sort of talk them into really doing it the way Gerry wanted it done, with one small change, I'll say, which is that instead of a character called Carolyn Carrington being the lead, which was what it was going to be. It was basically going to be mostly about Carolyn Carrington, who started her own rescue agency, and Jason Truby, who ran Gemini Force 1, and he sort of brings her in and recruits her into his agency. So it was, and I think there was kind of an implied romance and all that sort of thing. That's what Gerry wanted to do. So we made a bigger character of a character called Benedict, who was her son. And we thought, okay, well, let's make it more about Benedict joining the rescue agency. So we did talk the publisher around, actually. Now the publisher's so much committed to a sort of more grown-up version, really. So, you know, that I'm actually in the process of completing the edits, and a lot of the edits are kind of back to where we were originally, as in it's kind of gone full circle, and it's much more as we wanted it in the first place. In our mind, when we wanted to cast the characters for this, it could be a TV show one day, but it's certainly a book series. we wanted to be able to know, because there's, you know, a few of us involved, we wanted to know, what do these people look like? You see what I mean? Because if it's just one author working on it, then the author's got the idea of that character in their head. But if it's several people, you kind of want to agree on what do the characters look like. So we sort of have done a virtual casting. Okay, this is what we think they might look like. So this would be Benedict Carrington, good looking, and he's half Austrian. His mum is Austrian, and his dad is English, and he's, you know, very lucky to be the son of a billionaire. But sadly, his billionaire father dies. He's dead by page 1, really. So. And then Jason Truby would look something like this, or maybe if we did have access to, you know, top talent, I say it's George Clooney. Yeah. Clooney! Carolyn Carrington is a very sort of, you know, fit, athletic Austrian countess. Addison is our lead female pilot, and she's basically an Afghanistan veteran, and she's become an air display pilot, and she joins Gemini Force 1. And another guy who backed us to the extent where he could choose to have a character named after him is James Winch, and he plays a geological engineer.
He's a dead ringer for Jim.
Is he? So Julia Benke is another female pilot. She's Brazilian. You know these German Brazilians that there's quite a lot of anyway. She's a Brazilian. This is our doctor, our chief of medicine, Nina, and the junior medic, Lola, who is about 25 years old and a half a graduate. And, you know, Ben, 16 years old, public school educated, he thinks he's got a fair chance with her. 25. This guy is the guy I decided I fancy most in the cast, and he's called Toru, and I decided to make him gay because I thought it would be quite interesting to have the character I think is the most fanciable one to be unattainable by women. All the brief we had, by the way, from Gerry was, okay, so Jason Truby, that character existed, and the Carringtons existed, but all the other pilots were just described as a diverse, ethnically diverse, and you know, men and women from different countries, and all like at the top of their game. They all had to be excellent, you know, top pilots or engineers or medics or whatever, but they had to be from all over the world. Tim Hardy is a Scottish lad, and Paul is an Australian. And they're sort of based loosely on a couple of guys I knew when I was a postdoc in a lab. So they even look a bit like them. And finally, well, you know, Benedict's got to have a girl sort of a similar age to be friends with, hasn't he? So this is Jasmine, who's the daughter, she's 15, and she is the daughter of Michael Dietz, who's kind of like Jason Truby's right-hand guy, and he's Swiss. So we see we've got an international cast of interesting and good-looking people, and so in our heads, this is what the people look like. Obviously, if we ever did manage to get it made for TV, you know, we'd be looking to cast exactly that. No, you don't look enough like. Any questions up to now? Yes?
Would you say that The Uninvited is your favourite Thunderbirds episode?
No, I think the first Thunderbirds episode is my favourite one, actually, looking back. But because the thing about The Uninvited that's tantalising is that it's never explained who those guys are. We have no idea, who are they? It's just suddenly, you know, they've got spaceships, they live in a pyramid, they're a bit evil. I was just left with too many questions. I love the title and everything, but I just wanted to know more about them, and you know, you can search through the whole Thunderbirds canon, you never find out who those people are. So I think it's a bit too tantalising. If that had started something else, you know, I guess in my mind I was like churning away going, who are those people? Where do they come from? What are they doing? But because it's never answered. But the Fire Flash, I think, is just, you know, the episode with that.
Everyone's just jumping scare.
Yeah.
That's how I answer.
Do they? But also the beginning as well. The beginning when you're in that temple and, you know, the hood is there and everything. It's fantastic. It's so cinematic. It's so ambitious. Yeah.
How much more difficult or easy is it writing to somebody else's brief rather than your own? And how much freedom did you have within that brief as a writer?
It would have been impossible if it wasn't for the fact that when I'm, you know, without Gerry basically, to do it well enough, except that when I met Jamie, I said, okay, let's put aside all the technicalities of aircraft and all that kind of thing. I need to know where is this coming from for Gerry? Where was it coming from for Gerry? What did it signify? What's it saying? Because, you know, all authors are saying something, even if they don't know they're saying something about themselves and their own life. And at some point as an author, you need to understand what that is. It doesn't have to happen at the beginning when you're planning it, but it's like an actor. You have to tap in. What does that role have to, how do I connect with this character from my own life? You have to have some kind of connection. And as an author, you need that. So if you're going to write for somebody else's ideas, I just thought, I need to know where it was coming from. So we talked. And Jamie said, well, this is about, and because I said, I'm sensing family, Thunderbirds feels like a family group, and, Joe 90, a lot of the family seems to be a big theme. He said, yes, it is. And I said, okay, that I could sort of see how this would work then. The group would have a family dynamic. So then they're colleagues and everything, but it wouldn't be, say, like Blake Seven, where they all they don't hate each other, but there's not a lot of love either. It wouldn't be like that. It would have to be family, and you'd have to feel that when you came back to the base, you were safe, especially if it was going to be for a children's book. When Harry goes back to Hogwarts, he's always safe in Hogwarts. So children's literature sort of needs a place of safety, even if the outside world is very dangerous and threatening and everything. And then the other thing was, I said, where does the fascination with flight come from? And Jamie said, well, because Jerry's brother was a pilot and died in a car crash. And I thought, okay, all right. So there is a lot that's in Thunderbirds that's coming from part of Jerry's, inner life that needs to be expressed and brought out more. So once I knew that, I thought, okay, I can do this because I've got something to bring it out. But if I hadn't had Jamie to tell me that, I don't think I would have been really stabbing in the dark. I wouldn't have known. So once you know that, you go, okay, this is what we're going to punch on. This is what we're going to bring out. So I don't want to spoil anything for you, but those things are going to be brought out in Jason Truby's character, really, because of course he's the founder of Gemini Force. Any more questions? Yes, hi.
Somewhat similar to Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, there's a lot of racial and ethnic diversity in Gemini Force 1, which, yeah, fantastic, brilliant, love it. And also sexual diversity with Toro, which, again, absolutely brilliant. Would you say that there's slightly more gender equality at the risk of offending or getting booed than there was in perhaps the original 60s?
Yeah, and actually that was Gerry's idea. He wanted Carolyn Carrington. Carolyn was going to be the lead, and he described her as a Lara Croft type character.
In a Dolce &
yeah, he
Gabbana
actually
jumpsuit.
the original chapters I saw had described her as performing this rescue in a leather jumpsuit, and she was going to sort of not climb all the way to the top, but race in an elevator up to the top of a huge hotel and then do a rescue. And I was sort of thinking about this and saying, so she's watching the opening of a hotel in Dubai in a Dolce & Gabbana leather jumpsuit, really? I said, she wouldn't. She's a woman of style and taste. She wouldn't do that. But, then I sort of said, okay, so she's wearing something floaty and linen-y. But, of course, that's not safe to climb in. So then I kind of got into something even more sexist, which I said, well, she strips off, down to her sort of, Ripley outfit. And at this point, a friend of mine who is a writer, a very sort of into women's rights, she said, that's really sexist, you can't do that. I said, but, so she now is changing into a climbing outfit that she grabs from her, bedroom, because they've just been to the Himalayas at the beginning of the book. They've come back and Ben's father has died.
Having Toro as a gay character is just a continuation of stuff Dad was doing from the 60s. If you look at the strong female characters in the puppet shows, the angels in Captain Scarlet, introducing black characters in UFO in Space 1999, that kind of thing. He was always sort of championing those who he thought were underprivileged or underpowered or whatever in society. So I think it's a kind of natural progression of his wishes for sort of social improvement, I guess.
But it also just came out sort of naturally of the cast, because there's I don't know, altogether like 12 people. I thought, well, there would be somebody gay. At least one person statistically is going to be gay in that group. So, and rather than end up having people write slash fiction, I thought, let's just have somebody actually gay.
They'll write it anyway. But
well, yes, you mean between characters who aren't gay? Yeah, maybe. But at least there's one actual gay one, and he's
that is
and he's the
lovely
best
to see,
one.
especially in
He's the
a
best
kids'
looking
book.
one.
Yeah.
Sit down and tell your story. So the bit I'm going to read you, I'll just tell you how this came about. Okay. I sat in my agent's office. My agent was a good friend of Gerry's, and when he was first telling me about how this all came about, he said to me, I remember how Gerry described how the base would first appear, and then he told me in detail how Gerry had described how the base would first appear. So when I I actually tried as much as possible to convey all of that in the chapter where Ben and his mum and Addison are first introduced, are first taken to Gemini Force 1, which is this undersea base that kind of rises out of it. So it's like a semi-submersible, but it's just underwater, and then it comes out to the ocean. And so this chapter starts with Ben and his mum, Carolyn and Addison, the pilot, and they've all been persuaded to go to Jason Truby's to see this thing that it's like a business proposition. I want you to show you something. So he puts them in a Sikorsky helicopter on the island of Cozumel, which is just off the Caribbean coast of Mexico, and then they start flying into over the ocean. They'd flown around 30 nautical miles when Truby dropped the Sikorsky low to the water. If they'd been aboard a seacopter, Ben would have assumed Truby was preparing to land on the waves. There was not the barest hint of any firm land. He was itching to ask, but decided it would look pretty uncool. His eyes rested on Truby's hands and the avionics. Ben liked machines. He'd already persuaded his parents to allow him to learn to drive a tractor, a haymaker, and even his mother's Porsche Boxster around his grandfather's land near the Schloss Bach in Austria. But the cockpit of Truby's helicopter was on a whole other level, an almost dizzying array of screens, switches and buttons. When he'd commented, Truby had only said, "You pick it up pretty fast." Ben noticed that Truby's eyes kept going to a small attachment, a kind of handheld phone or device that was fixed to the helicopter's collective control, but now Ben realised might not actually be part of it. Truby's hand went to the device he'd been eyeing. He tapped the screen, a rapid series of keystrokes. It looked like a code. The radio crackled into life. Arrival code received. Thank you, Gemini. This is Sagittarius at 1, activating landing mode. Over. Ben stared intently at Truby. Gemini? Sagittarius? What are you, the Zodiac Club? Truby just grinned. Before Ben could say any of the other things that were fighting for mind space, a single blue beam of light appeared suddenly in the sky. It stood straight up out of the ocean, at least 20 metres high. Whoa, what the heck is that? Almost as soon as it appeared, it was gone. He was about to say something, but before he could, the light appeared again, followed by 4 more beams of light. Gemini prepared to land. The blue beams disappeared. Ben noticed that Truby had adjusted their trajectory. They were flying straight into the centre of the 5 lights. The next time the lights appeared, they seemed to be heating the seawater. It frothed and boiled at the source of the light. Ben gazed, transfixed. The water roiled, it bubbled ever more violently. The blue pillars of light continued to flash, on and off. At first all 5, then 3, then finally a single light remained. From beneath the froth, the ocean appeared to heave. The foaming water level rose until Ben could see that some kind of gigantic submersible craft was rising beneath it. He watched, the breath trapped in his throat. It was a submarine. It was some kind of enormous vessel, at least as wide as an aircraft carrier and as long as a cruise liner. This is unreal. It's quite real. Ben didn't need to see Truby to know he was smiling. Mom, are you seeing this? Over the intercom, he heard Addison say, "Damn straight we're seeing this." The power of speech left him then. There was an otherworldly quality to what was taking place before his eyes. An enormous edifice was rising up from the ocean. The entire structure was in silhouette, but glinted very slightly when caught in the wavering beam of the chopper's searchlight. Water fell away, collapsing in sheer waves around 10 metres high that crashed into the sea. A circle of lights appeared, faintly blue like dim LEDs. They wrapped around most of the disc-like structure. Ben had a sudden impression of an airport terminal, some such generous viewing gallery supported by 4 huge columns. As its watery membrane seeped away, he could see various features on the edifice. It looked somewhere between how he imagined an oil drilling rig crossed with a submerged spaceship. All the edges were soft, rounded as if worn smooth by the depths of the ocean, hyperbaric. The lights were windows. Ben was almost certain, portholes behind which he caught tantalising glimpses of light. The vertical beams of light were shining from the far end of the structure. A domed shape, some kind of roof, began to roll to one side, revealing a platform. It was opening. The moment the platform was clear of the water, the vertical beams blinked out. Switching to guide LEDs, Gemini, over. A row of dimly lit green discs, each no more than the size of a tennis ball, appeared in the sky. Eerily suspended, apparently in the middle of the sky, Ben realised that the lights delineated the upper edge of the platform. Is this some kind of secret airport? Truby didn't answer. Switching chopper to dark mode, 1, over. The rising platform had stalled. Ben guessed that there was still more of it beneath the water, maybe a lot more. The roof had by now risen more than 30 metres, towering over them ahead. The helicopter began to swoop upwards, aiming for the top. As they cleared the row of lights around the edge, Ben noticed that they immediately turned off. The sky and sea were dark. The enormous black shadow beneath them felt suddenly ominous, a giant placid sea monster waiting silently to swallow them whole. Turning landing LEDs on, Gemini. Roger that one. A rectangle of orange lights appeared below them now. They were so faint that Ben could hardly make them out. But Truby seemed better attuned. Within a minute, he positioned the helicopter directly above the centre of the rectangle. Now they were hovering. "You're cleared to land, Gemini." Ben thought he detected a faint German accent in the voice of Sagittarius. They began vertically to drop. This was Ben's favourite part of riding in a helicopter. The last time he'd been in one, they'd been searching for a glimpse of his father, somewhere under the Annapurna region of the Himalayan mountains. The memory was momentarily painful, but the experience of being inside an aircraft that was descending into a mysterious something was too distracting. As they dropped, Ben realised that the gigantic platform was itself falling too, sinking back into the ocean with the helicopter and the four of them inside, Jonah into the wake. Nobody inside the helicopter so much as breathed a syllable. Above the clatter of the rotor blades, Ben heard the grinding mechanism of a roof rolling back in place overhead, moving into closed position. For a few seconds, their features were bathed only in the dappled rainbow of lights from the avionics. And then the bay around them erupted with light. The entire wall to Ruby's right began to slide into the floor. Beyond, the sight was possibly the last thing that Ben could have expected. A vast open space, a combination of functional desk spaces and living areas, distinct areas decorated in cookily uncoordinated fashion. It was like stumbling into the underwater offices of some achingly trendy .com. Breathless, Ben turned to Truby. You've got to be kidding. TrubyCon has headquarters under the water? No joke, Ben. Truby extended a hand. And this is not TrubyCon. Carolyn, Addison, Ben, welcome to Gemini Force 1. That's the beginning.
There you go. And that's a lot more than anybody else has heard. So.
Oh yes, I've never read that before. This is the first Gemini Force 1 event ever. Because, you know, normally you don't do events for books before they're written. I mean, this one's written as in, you know, but it's not, it doesn't even exist in paper form at the publishers, you know, with galleys or anything. This is literally, you know, that is the version 2.2 to be handed in on Monday to my editor. So it's very exciting for me. I've never had an event before the book's published.
A year before it's going to be out. So yeah, you've got
it's great that there's the
advanced preview. Yeah, any questions, anyone? Anything you've heard? No? Anything exciting? What did you think, Richard? Did you enjoy it?
That's excellent. Can I ask a question about the Kickstarter fund?
Yes.
So those of us that gave money to the Kickstarter fund, now that it's being picked up by a publisher, do we get our money back?
You spent it.
Yeah, it's all spent. We're on holiday next week. No, everyone who backed Kickstarter gets a little upgrade as a thank you. But I think part of what was exciting to the publishers was that we went with the book fully, well, pretty much finished and paid for. So that was kind of one of the reasons they allowed us to keep it in its original Gerry Anderson-like form rather than turning it into Spy Kids in a book.
Yeah, exactly. They bought a finished thing, really, that was paid for, you know, not that much.
Yeah,
Actually.
but the money we saved goes to Andrew Probert to do
Yay,
vehicle
Andrew Probert.
designs.
Tell them about Andrew.
Well, Andrew's just a
Do you
great
all
guy.
know who Andrew Probert is?
Some nods.
No, some shaking heads. Tell
No.
them.
Andrew is a sci-fi design legend, I suppose. He designed the Enterprise D, the inside of the Enterprise and the Next Generation, the DeLorean, the Airwolf chopper, the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica, that kind of stuff. So,
And Gemini Force 1.
and the base, Gemini Force 1, and so now he's starting to design the vehicles themselves. So they should be pretty cool looking. Well, they are. We know Gemini Force 1 is cool looking.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I really wanted to be able to show you, but generally won't let me, is what Andrew and I were working on. Basically, Andrew and I had a lot of Skype conversations and email conversations about what Gerry had left in terms of descriptions of the base, and then he would go about designing it, and he would use these, you know, kind of 3D sketch tools to sort of render
the thing, and then I'd be like writing a chapter that was set in a particular part of the base, and I'd say, you know, can I have this there, and can we have that there, and then he produced these walkthroughs for me. Now this is something that doesn't happen when you write books. You have to do it all in your own head. You don't get a top Hollywood designer creating the, you know, your set for you, if you like, and then you can see exactly where everything would take place. So when I write in this book that, you know, this is set in a place like this, it all exists in a design form now, and the reason why we can't really show it is because the production values are still sketch level. I mean, it's way more, as I say, than anything any book author ever gets, but it is still, it's not like top production values. And Jamie, as the, you know, custodian of his father's legacy, said no, everything that we put out that's going to be, you know, on the screen has to be high enough production level. So you'll never see it, but I've done a virtual walkthrough of the base.
So how will we as readers see?
Well,
see
you
these
just have to
illustrations?
put up with my descriptions and, you know, your pictures in your mind. But well, if we can, any extra money that we've got, we're going to pay to Andrew to get him to design, you know, whatever it is that we can afford, basically. We would, you know, we want to get some visuals of the base, but I don't know whether we'll get Andrew to do those.
But might they appear on, you know, a website or
they certainly will.
We'll
in the fullness of time?
And we did negotiate control of all the design. You know, we insisted they use our logo. If we design if we get Andrew to design the vehicles, Orion have to use those. If they're going to use any vehicle designs on the covers of their books, they have to use our designs.
Well, I mean, all that stuff obviously starts on the page somewhere. It starts in word form. Even the brief of Thunderbirds, when the vehicles were called Rescue 1 to 5, they were just, you know, short 2-sentence descriptions, and that's what we've got. They've got to start somewhere, but as well as MG's descriptions, there will be, probably before we publish actually, decent designs, and hopefully some nice pretty renders as well of all the vehicles.
I mean, Gerry was quite kind of, you know, again, he had left a lot of that stuff vague. You know, it was all like, there'll be a submarine, and there'll be a submersible, and there'll be a helicopter, but without being, you know, without kind of describing them in detail. And I said to my agent, oh, please tell me that the craft had been designed, because I'm really not very good at that stuff in my head. And the Joshua Files series has a kind of a suborbital fast aeroplane that the secret society that Josh discovers under the pyramid in Mexico, that they fly. And one of the things I really hated was having to describe that thing, because I'd get kids coming up to me and saying, have you got any pictures of the Muan crafts? And I said, I haven't got any, and, you know, I don't know exactly what it looks like. I've been quite vague about all that kind of thing. So what I did was I'd learned from that experience that the best thing to do is to find a craft on the internet, to find some design from these, you know, these websites where designers upload their designs. Find something that looks about right, and then sort of in your mind, that's sort of it. So I did come up with, I pulled up, you know, about 7 or 8 different crafts that would more or less look like the things that Gerry had kind of outlined. And then I was like, okay, in my head, that's what it looks like. So now, you know, Andrew Probert will look at those, and then he'll do it, but good, you know, or different. At least in a way that we will own, rather than designs that we've just sort of seen on the internet. Actually, working with Andrew is one of the best things that's happened to me.
Oh, thanks, Peter.
It's so cool. Don't you think?
Yeah, no, Andrew's great.
Project, it is one of the best things.
Yeah, Andrew's great. We've worked with a couple of designers trying to bring some new other bits and pieces together, and they haven't gone to anywhere near the same lengths that Andrew has gone. I mean, to create multiple animated walkthroughs where he's recorded a voiceover describing the function of each part. You know, Gemini Force 1, the base even has like a kitchenette in it, and with a location is specified.
About they'll need to eat, and they can make sandwiches in. There's little cupboards here, and one of the things I liked most is that I was talking to him about, and I said, you know, there needs to be a room with like a rock climbing wall, or something that they can do some kind of, you know, exercise in, because they don't want to be trapped there all the time, even though they're working shifts. And he said, and then he told me, he said, well, you know, when I used to work for Steven Spielberg, he said, when I used to work with Steven Spielberg at Amblin, he said he had this rocky area with like waterfalls and everything. And he said, would you like something like that with a waterfall and then a rock climbing wall? And I thought, yeah, that'd be brilliant, because it's under the sea, so there's plenty of water. They could just bring it in at the top, have it be a waterfall, go into a plunge pool and then be circulated out. You know, there's no problem with water. So now we've got this room that's called, obviously, the Marina Room, which is like a plunge pool with a waterfall and a rock climbing wall. And that came out of, you know, something that was left from Gerry, and then Andrew's, oh yes, well of course Spielberg has this in his office. And I was going like, he knows Spielberg! It was really cool. But he was really impressed to do something with Gerry's legacy, that's the thing. That's why you can do something like this and get people like that.
It's been great working with Andrew. And Andrew was a fan of UFO and a fan of Space in 1999. And in fact, as soon as we started speaking to him, he dug out all of his old collectibles and sent me photos of himself, you know, holding up his. I think he had like a Viewmaster, UFO Viewmaster, which he was very fond of. So yeah, so he's a real fan, and anyone who's like that, or like MG or Andrew, or anyone that was a fan, they just get it. They get Anderson stuff. They get why it works. So they're the right people to work with. Question, Duncan?
Yes. Well, I was a kid. I used to get into trouble with my teachers because I was reading a book because it had pictures in it. And so I take it the Gemini Force books are going to have designs of the craft in pictures, perhaps in the middle of the book or somewhere.
We did argue for that, but I don't think they can. They would be too expensive. That would be. They have talked about doing a coffee table edition. They did actually. We had a meeting, and the head of Orion Publishing Group said, "Oh, we could do a coffee table book at some point in the future with all the designs in and some special edition, but it would just be a book of designs, and you know, it would be a sort of meta book rather than a book of the series." But we did try for that, Duncan. I promise. We did try, but they just said no. We can't do that in time, basically, because it's got to be. It's practically got to start being put together, this book, next month, which is why the writing and the editing process have been under quite a lot of pressure.
In the past, there's been cases like, I think it's Star Cruiser, and I think it might have been a couple of others, where Airfix got their hands on, perfectly legitimately, on design craft from the forthcoming Gerry Anderson show, which didn't quite get off the ground, but yet the kit sold very successfully. Yeah. And it got released, I think, not just Airfix, but I think about 5 other different companies around the world did their own edition of the Star Cruiser. Is there possibly that maybe merchandise might get onto the market before a TV series ever gets made?
Yeah, I mean, the other good thing that's come up is because of the Kickstarter campaign, it being so successful, and the general kind of rebirth of Anderson shows, is that we are being approached by licensees already. So we haven't even got designs completed, and licensees are saying, well, could we maybe do a Viewmaster? They don't even do Viewmasters anymore.
They don't.
Really?
Absolutely.
It's a, you know,
Really?
kind of, you know, retro toy. I used to have a lot of Viewmasters.
Well, they're still doing new ones. They still have new ones coming out.
I'm amazed. Oh, well, there you go. Maybe there's a...
I wish I'd stored mine a bit better than I found the other day. They'd all stuck together.
Shame. Shame.
But I read an article the other day, I can't remember where, somewhere on the internet, I think cracked.com, and it was saying that it's almost impossible to get a movie deal now unless there's some merchandising tie-in, as if toys come before the story now. So I remember thinking, ideal. Here are the toys, here's the story.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't make any concessions over design and that kind of thing, just to make them exciting as toys. But
No,
every
but
Anderson
exactly.
show, just by its nature, has that.
But Andrew knows all about that, because one of the conversations I had with him, he was talking about making the base. He came up with this kind of modular idea for how you would put the different hangar bays. So there's like a central, you know, spaceship. It's almost like a submerged spaceship on a pillar, basically, that comes up and down out of the sea. And it's about, I don't know, 50 metres under the sea, or 20 metres, and then it comes up, whatever. But he said, oh, the ships have to be in hangar bays, and he sort of came up with a kind of multi-attack, you know, so that the toy, he said, he was talking about the toy straight away, he said, so that you could take the toy off and put in, you know, you could buy different attachments for it, and kids could collect lots of different, and I thought, okay, he knows how to do this in a way that you're already thinking about toys, because I wouldn't have thought of that at all. I would be thinking about what the story needs, and so we matched what the story needed with what he could see would be good for toys.
But that also came out of a discussion I had with Andrew about what the most iconic Anderson vehicles were. And if I say what are the most iconic vehicles, the two what would you say?
Thunderbird 2.
Thunderbird 2 and Eagle, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, and both of those craft are modular craft. There's a pod aspect to them. And I think there's something in there. Obviously the design themselves is excellent, but I think there's something exciting about the sort of the variation you can have with the same craft. And it's exactly the same with this. Right.
Jamie, we've got a few minutes to spare and you've got an interested audience. Do you want to just expand this slightly and explain what exactly is the Lost Worlds of Gerry Anderson?
Yeah, sure. When I was going through Dad's personal archive after he died, I went through sort of endless bits and pieces of the filing cabinet, but he kept so little, I was so disappointed. And then I found this weird bunch of photos of a couple of pandas and some dolls. And I thought, what the bloody hell is that? So I looked into it, and it was something called Candy and Andy. Most people have never heard of any of this Candy and Andy thing. So essentially, Candy and Andy was a photo-based comic strip from the 60s. And Dad, I think this must have been post-Thunderbirds, thought, oh, what would be a really good idea that kids would like? Well, kids love toys, and they love furry things, furry animals. So I'll have it so that there's a couple of sort of bipedal pandas called Mr. and Mrs. Bearander, and they're going to be the custodians or carers for a couple of children who just happen to be mannequins called Candy and Andy, and they live in a toy shop and they drive around in a Mini called Stripey the Magic Mini. And I couldn't believe this was by the same man who came up with Thunderbirds. But I think Candy and Andy as a photo comic went for like 190 issues or something crazy as a weekly, and it was quite, successful, not as successful as Dad had hoped, and I think it was such a kooky combination.
Was there a dinky toy, wasn't it?
There was a dinky toy, yeah. So there's Stripey the Magic Mini and the sort of, I want to say lead, I'm sure they were lead, Mr. and Mrs. Bearander and Candy and Andy. Anyway, it was really creepy, but not all the things that were, not very well known or not even made were as strange or as creepy. There were other things like Duncan mentioned, Star Cruiser, which he had his original treatment for, which was supposed to be a TV series. The same with Intergalactic Rescue 4, another project. And I kept digging, and there was the script for Firestar 5 there, and there was another show called, it was a film called Hello Mr. Chips, which seemed to be entirely a dig at Fred Freiberger. Just this endless line of unseen, unfinished documents. Add that together with the pilot films that never quite made it to transmission, like Space Police or The Investigator or The Day After Tomorrow, that kind of thing. Those are the Lost Worlds of Gerry Anderson. They're the bits and pieces that people don't know so well or never quite made it, or even never made it off the page, but I would like people to see. So we've just started to release Lost Worlds items. So in fact, thanks to Ralph, of course, who supplied me with a copy of the Space Police pilot script. The Space Police pilot script is now available. Next up, I think we're working on Firestar 5, and Chris Thompson, who is a great CG artist, is doing some imagined scenes from the film to illustrate it. Because whereas Space Police was made into a pilot, we have the visuals. We have no visuals at all for Firestar 5, except for a really ugly model that was made out of, God knows what, matchboxes and mousetraps, it looks like. It's incredibly ugly. But Chris is capturing kind of the essence of a 70s sci-fi show. So hopefully that will be out later in the year. So there you go, that's the Lost Worlds, and there's lots and lots of that to come. Okay, I guess we'll better wrap it up because we'll go on to the next one. But thank you very much for coming, everybody, and for your questions, much appreciated.